And I'm going to turn on the recording here. You may also have seen something that said that there's an AI chat enabled, and that's, or an AI summary enabled, and that's so that we can put some notes into our private group. Talk about that again in just a moment. So I'm Linda Brubaker, and I am a job search coach, and this is Job Search Lunch and Learn, here to provide you with tips and tricks and networking and support. I come to this as a coach with over 20 years of experience on the other side of the desk, as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, as a headhunter, and as an HR business partner. And I've been a job search coach now for the last 7 years. So you're getting advice from all sides of that recruiting desk. I love being here and supporting you, and we're going to give you all a chance to share some wins in just a moment. As I mentioned earlier, this is my give back. And in addition, I do provide job search coaching and career coaching, including resume support, LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn engagement, interviewing prep, and more to people who are interested in working with me one-on-one. In the meantime, before we get started sharing your wins, we have a couple of, or at least one job search coach. Ken, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No, sure. I'm happy to do that. I'm here to support Linda, and as to do with all of my other fellow career coaches. I do one-on-one LinkedIn presentations and job search strategies. I also work for Lee Act Harrison. So I definitely understand the challenges that you have. And I will put my LinkedIn URL in the chat. I see some familiar faces on this call. Any questions you have, reach out to me. And Linda, I'm always here to help and support you too. So again, thanks a lot for the opportunity to introduce myself.
absolutely, Ken, you know that I do the same for you. We have this great network going behind the scenes where we get advice and support from each other, and we support each other in these programs so that we can continue to support all of you. All right, so make sure that you do put your information in the chat. LinkedIn URLs are important. We want to connect with one another. And for those of us who still have free accounts, you know that you only have 5 connection request messages. If you see someone here in the chat, I'm not making a blanket statement. I'm hoping you all will agree with me that for the most part, most of us, if you're checking the chat and you see that's where it came from, you can send that connection request without a message. Okay, so double check to see the chat and who's there. Connect with people, and then let's start sharing some information and support. Okay, let's start sharing it, and let's start doing some quick wins. So if anybody's had a quick win over the last week, please add that. Okay, raise your digital hand. We've got enough people here that digital hands are going to be important so that everybody doesn't talk at once. All right, John.
You and I talked last week, and I'd mentioned that I'd been interviewing with a contract company to do some contract work, and they seemed to have disappeared. And then I think it was either the same day or the day after we talked, they reached back out to ask me to go through another round of interviewing, which I did. Seemed to go well. And then they contacted me yesterday to say that though they were going to have me work on 2 projects, but one they have to keep in-house, but are still considering me for the other, and they want me to talk to yet another person at the company, I guess sort of the boss's boss, to talk about a different third project that they could have me work on.
Well, that sounds like great progress. Obviously, they like your skill set, and they're just trying to find the right place for you. And I love the fact that it's contract. I know you would rather have full time, but contract feeds right back into what we're talking about today. So may bring you back up on the screen at a later date or a later time during the program too. Thank you. Okay, Sherry, I think you were next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sherry Hettenberg. Okay, so yesterday I had a video interview with the mayor of South Barrington. Interview went really well. The job description didn't say anything about some of the skills that I actually have. I'm making a career pivot from marketing into an executive assistant, and she was talking about some projects and skills that aren't on the job description. And I'm really excited about that because I feel I have a leg up in the situation, but I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. She did say that she wants me to meet another person that I would be reporting with sometime next week. So I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Okay. Career pivots aren't easy, and I think you're doing a good job of trying to pivot yourself, because I've seen a lot of the posts that you've had that are trying to position yourself for that kind of a new role. So great job. Keep us posted.
Thank you.
Deb Gates.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Deb Gates. I'm in the Chicago area. I'm looking for an HR talent acquisition type of role. I'm excited because I had an interview for a recruiter position in Des Plaines. It seemed to go well. It was only a short phone conversation, but hopefully I'll be invited in for a face-to-face. But the win is not that I had that interview, but that I just was selected to be a religious school educator for Sundays. So a small stipend. It's actually kind of laughable, but it just felt good to be asked to teach. And someone had put it on Facebook, and I, reached out to the person, and it just felt good to be wanted again. So, so hopefully that will lead to other things, because in this congregation, there's lots of people where we're going to be able to hopefully network professionally. So I'm kind of excited for that. So yay.
That's a huge win. It's not a small win. Okay. And it's a big win for a couple of reasons. One of which is, look at the smile on your face. Okay. It's fantastic. I love seeing that. It could be a part-time job, but part-time jobs are also important, and you can add them to your LinkedIn profile and your resume as well.
Quick question regarding that. And if this is something to discuss offline, that's fine. How do I put, because it's a stipend that's paid out monthly and it won't be paid until October, how do I do that when I certify every week for my unemployment? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does make sense to what you're saying, and I honestly don't have a great answer, but I would do it on the basis of when you get the check. That's the only time that you need to report it.
Okay. Well, then in that case, my unemployment will be over with by the time I get my first check.
Excuse me. What state are you in?
Illinois.
And who is this?
This is Scott answering. I know in New Jersey asks, did you work during this time? And you put the number of hours you work and the rate you expect to receive, and then they'll pay you a partial benefit amount less that amount that you earned.
Okay.
But you have to report it in the work. If asks that you worked, you got to report that you worked, even if you didn't get paid yet.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
Yep.
that.
Sure. So double check the rules in Illinois, because I honestly don't know, but you can call the unemployment office and they can tell you. Okay.
Great.
My understanding, at least the last time I advised somebody about this, which granted was a year or so ago, was that you only have to report it, especially because it's so few hours, Deb, a week, that you only have to report it in the week in which you work, but report all of those hours at
Okay.
once.
Okay. Great.
But
Thank you,
ask-
everybody.
Okay, you're welcome. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon. So a couple of updates. On Thursday, I was on LinkedIn. I saw this new recruiter. She got a new job and has an opening for what I would consider a perfect role for me. So I immediately contacted her. Congratulations on new job. What you posted, I believe I'm qualified. She got back to me. I had a very detailed conversation with her on Monday. And she said she's meeting with the hiring manager yesterday afternoon, and she's going to recommend me to have a conversation with the hiring manager. So that just come out of the blue. I also had a conversation with an internal recruiter 2.5 weeks ago, and she said, most of the team are traveling. I get in touch with you later. I sent her an email last week, end of the last week. She got back to me yesterday and set up an interview with the CEO of the company today in about 2 hours.
Fantastic.
Good. And then I had, for those of you who were here last week, I still have that verbal offer for my overseas job, which I'm not really into it. But they said, hey, stay tight. We are putting together a package. Again, something that I don't feel right. I have to be away from family, and it's a place that I'm not familiar with. But anyway, it's still under work. But two activities just came up this week. So
That's great.
one other thing I see, I don't know whether it's the season or what, I see a lot more of people I have on LinkedIn that they are now saying they are getting jobs. So whether it's just on my little bubble or actually the job market is improving. Again, just to share that. Thank you.
Great. And I think we'll do a little bit of a cracked crystal ball when we're done with all the updates. Anybody else have a quick win to share? Okay. See one more.
Yeah. Hold on,
Okay,
let me
Jim.
turn my camera on. Hi.
Good.
So something happened yesterday that I thought I'd share. So I've been doing some volunteer work and started a new session with a different group and met with one of the other volunteers. We were working through some technical things, and I mentioned about my job search. And I hardly know this person except for the brief conversations, but what was interesting was she told me things about myself that I already knew, but it was nice to hear it in a different voice. So I think it'll help me when I get asked, tell me about yourself. So just want to make that suggestion. If anyone feels like they want to get a different perspective on how to answer that question, some situation where you can get somebody else to, give you that feedback is very helpful.
It absolutely is. You're absolutely right. And I love the fact that so far we've heard people talk about part-time jobs, contract jobs, and volunteer roles, all of which we're going to be talking about later this afternoon or this morning. So that's great. Congratulations. Any other quick wins? Okay. And a quick win can even be a turn down, by the way, because if you got the feedback, you get the response, and a turn down says that you've had the activity, that somebody enjoyed what you were talking about, that they got some value from what you did. Even if you don't move forward, it's still an opportunity to practice, to get the feedback, to get yourself out there, and you're never going to get the job unless you get the interview. So that's always the first step. Okay, Julie. Unmute. Nope. Try again, Julie. Okay. I can mute people, but I can't unmute. So tell you what, you may need to log out and then log back in. And when you do, raise your hand and we'll get you back up again. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then let's do a little bit of cracked crystal ball. And talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the job market. And Ken, please chime in for this because you're seeing some of this as well. I'm still seeing that mixed bag out there. If you'll notice that there are still people who are getting laid off. In fact, the layoffs for last month were much higher. They were almost not quite double what the standard average is. The average is about 1 million jobs lost through layoff a month. And I think it was July, it was closer to about 1.7 million. Okay, so it really went up. By the same token, we are seeing people getting hired. And I love the fact that they're beginning to pop up on LinkedIn and you're seeing that. So there are more jobs that are coming open. We're hoping that those are real jobs. Come back next week and, as we've got Mark Anthony Dyson, who's going to be talking about job scams, how to recognize them, how to avoid them, okay? Know what's real and what's not. But In addition, we are finding that companies are starting to be a little more judicious in terms of what they're posting. So hopefully we're seeing some more real jobs out there. I am seeing more people getting hired. Some of the people whose hired signs are going up are people who actually got their jobs over the last several months, because not everybody takes down their banner and announces it on LinkedIn right away. Okay. And so you may see this over, the job actually changed. It could have changed 3 or 4 months ago, but you're still seeing that banner come down in that announcement, and that's okay. Okay. In fact, actually, with some people, based on the jobs they're getting, I kind of encourage that. Okay. It's okay to make sure that it's real where you want to be before you decide that you're announcing it to the world. But yes, I am starting to see some of that activity too. What are you seeing, Ken?
What I'm seeing is a very mixed market, honestly, based on the industry. I think I'm going to speak from Lee Act Harrison perspective. We're getting a lot of companies now that are looking for short-term workers and not long-term, pretty much project-based.
Yep.
Because they don't know what they want to do from a budget standpoint, but we always recommend it's a great way to get your foot in the door. And I don't know if you talk too much about being a fractional job worker or a fractional PM, but that's a really great thing to do. Basically have a few gigs lined up together. But the other thing we preach a lot is you gotta think outside your comfort zone when you reach out to people. It's not about applying for a job, it's about doing all the things that are non-intuitive to you. So those are kind of my thoughts.
And that's absolutely right. I'm seeing exactly the same thing. And yes, we are going to be talking about fractional part-time roles, but I am seeing, and everybody that I'm talking with, all the research that I'm doing tells me that those fractional, those part-time roles are what you're going to be seeing more and more of. And they're doing it specifically for the reason that Ken mentioned, is that they don't really know what the market's going to look like. They don't know what their workforce really needs to be. What they like about that project work, that fractional work, is that you can be there for that set period of time, that project, and when it's gone, so are you. So from their budget perspective, it's very different. Okay. One more thing learned as an HR business partner is that an employee and a contractor often come from 2 different buckets on the budget list. So if you are coming in as a W-2 contractor or a fractional part-time employee, you are on the employee line. If, however, you are coming in as a contractor and you're coming in as I suddenly lost what it's called, but you're not on their payroll, okay? If you're not a W-2 employee, you come out of the expense line. From a company's perspective, adding people to the expense line makes sense. Their board of directors, their stockholders see expenses all as one bucket. And so it's not something that stockholders normally complain about. That employee line, okay, on the budget is something that gets a lot of scrutiny. And it gets scrutiny in 2 different ways. One of which is if a company's financials are meh, or the stockholders want to do something about it, they may look at that line and say you need to reduce staff. But from the other perspective, that employee line, the number of employees out there, also causes some problems in terms of job search scams or fake jobs being posted. Some companies want to make themselves look better both internally. Okay. Hey, employees, don't worry about it. We've got these jobs posted. We're going to make your lives better by adding extra people. They may not really mean it. But from a stockholder's perspective, seeing that a company is looking to add new people says that the company thinks they're growing. So whether they put them out there and they never choose to hire is a different story, but it is a way of doing it. So is there a mixed bag out there? Absolutely. Are we starting to see some slowdown in some job search markets or some job areas? We are. Okay. Education right now is growing still. Healthcare, actually, healthcare is one of those areas that used to be a staple But even in the healthcare arena, we are seeing some shrinkage in the number of real jobs out there. Part of that is the consolidation of healthcare organizations. Okay. Part of it is that they too are bringing in some of those contract roles in certain areas. We're seeing the hospitality industry still continue to grow. IT seems to be a mixed bag. So does the financial arena. So can I tell you that we've got a standard across the board growing area? I can't. Can I tell you that some companies are waiting, we think, until after the election to see what happens? They may be. Or some may be waiting for the next information from the Fed and how that's going to change things. But nothing's going to change overnight. It is changing, however. And I firmly believe that the more you keep at it, the more likely you are to get something and to get something you really want. And I'm going to go back to Ali's comment about that overseas job again. We talked about this last week. If the job doesn't make you comfortable, if the location doesn't make you comfortable, give yourself permission to turn it down, especially one like that, where it is such a huge commitment, both for you and for your family. Okay. Julie, you want to try this again?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, yay. I don't know. I shouldn't laugh, but anyway, what was I going to say? Yes, I do have an interview tomorrow.
Yay.
For a contract role. It's some of the stuff that I mostly have done before, but I feel like even so, a contract, you never know, it can lead to something else. And, they reached out to me about it. So, I just figured, well, obviously it doesn't hurt to, even so to do that. I am currently volunteering though, been volunteering for a startup organization that I'm doing other things for them, recruiting and HR coordination for. So I figure to keep that going, because it's keeping up the skill set and learning new things as well.
That's
So,
absolutely right. And those are both important things. So you mentioned that they reached out to you. Where did they find you?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah, they did. But it's ironically the same company. I don't know if unfortunately, I don't know if it's a scam or not. They emailed me for a different position, a remote recruiter, and I was supposed to have the interview on Monday. I never got a link. I emailed. I even asked this one about this other position. Hey, I never got an email. She didn't know who reached out to me. And I don't know if that was a scam or what it was, but I never got an email or, a Zoom link for that particular interview. And I emailed and I haven't heard back since on that. So I don't know. You just keep going. That's all I got to say.
That's exactly right. By the way, Julie, were you the one who mentioned that the link came in for an app that they wanted you to download for the interview?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Was this one, and I apologize if it was someone different, about an app that they wanted you to download?
No, that was something other. That was another job where they wanted the app, and I was suspicious of that. That's why I wanted to double check and ask on that, because I've had that in the past where all of a sudden, upload this app and we'll do the interview right away. And it is right. That is suspicious and a scam.
It is definitely a scam. Perfect.
Yeah, no, this is something totally different. It was totally different.
Great. All right, keep us posted. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. If somebody wants you to download an app, no legitimate recruiter is going to interview over WhatsApp. No legitimate recruiter is going to interview you over a text message of any kind or any kind of an app. The only app that they may ask you to download would be one where they're going to be saying, you need this in order to connect to our Zoom or their version of Zoom, okay? Or to Spark Hire. But even then, you don't really have to download the app. You just have to visit the link. Okay, so be incredibly suspicious, incredibly cautious. If anyone is asking you to download an app, no legitimate interviewing is going to take place by text in any app whatsoever, period, end. Okay, it really will not happen. Okay. All right, so now let's start talking about what we're talking about, okay? By the way, keep putting your information in the chat. Remember, your LinkedIn URL, I will copy this into our private group. Sometimes the links remain active, sometimes they don't. But we'll show you at the end how to save that chat so that you can do that as well and connect with one another, reach out to all of us. Okay, we're here to support you. So what we're talking about today, and I want everybody to get your questions ready so that we can do this. We're talking about part-time jobs, fractional roles, which is one of the newer terms out there for some of those part-time opportunities, and contract roles and volunteers. All of those activities are fantastic in terms of helping you to learn skills, showcase skills, get some new achievements and accomplishments, make new connections. And as Ken said earlier, they're a great way of getting to know the people inside that company so that now you have that advocate for you on the inside. So whether your role becomes one that turns into a full-time job, or whether it's one that you're just there so that you can hear about new opportunities, you've got an internal advocate for you, someone who already knows you and the work that you are doing. So I highly recommend, okay, contract roles, part-time roles, fractional roles, okay? I know it's not where you want to end up, but look at it as that transitional state for yourself. And that works. And I'm really pleased to hear that so many of you are beginning to take advantage of those kinds of opportunities. And again, cracked crystal ball, those are going to be growing. So any of you heard the term fractional role, or is that a new one? Okay. It's one that I just started hearing, I want to say about 6 months ago, in more common usage. To me, it really means part-time. Okay. They're saying that they want a fractional chief IT officer or chief marketing officer, as an example. We can't afford all of them, so we'll hire you for a 2/3 role. Okay, which means that you can have another 2/3 or 3/3 or 1/3 that you can do for somebody else. So they're telling you about how much time they want. They're looking at that as a way of saying it's an elevated term. Okay, it sounds better than saying part-time. It's actually the same thing. But we're telling you that from our company's perspective, we think we need X percentage of your time. That's the way we're advertising it. That's the way we're talking about it. And when we do that, you normally become, if it's fractional role, you normally become a W-2 employee. That doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get benefits, but we hope that you will. That's one of the things that you can talk about. Companies haven't started changing their benefits eligibility yet for fractional positions, at least not that I've seen. Have you seen that, Ken?
I really haven't. I haven't really looked into it too much. I think that's when you have to factor in also the cost of what you're willing to pay yourself, right? And that's a big part of it. What is my rate going to be? How much am I going to charge? And you want to factor in all the different costs, and benefits would be part of that cost. And I don't know that a lot of people actually think that through. It's you know what you're worth, but you have to actually check the market out and see what people like yourself are actually getting, for the same type of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so it is something to consider, but here's something people don't tell you. And if I were in my role as an HR business partner, I would never say this. As an internal recruiter, I would never say this. Okay, and I will tell you that a couple of years ago, even as a coach, I would never say this, but I'm saying it now. If you accept a contract role, if you accept a part-time role, fractional role, okay, there is an implicit understanding on the company's part that they know that they're not making any commitment to you for a full-time position, that you're still going to keep looking. So even though it says this is the contract and it's going to go for this period of time, they can cut it off at any time. My recommendation to anyone who accepts a contract or a temporary role or a part-time fractional position is that you keep your job search going. I wouldn't necessarily keep the green banner up. Okay, but you can if you choose to. But the idea is, if you keep the banner up, you are looking for something to supplement, not to replace. But keep that networking going, keep that job search going, keep applying. Because most of us are really looking for those full-time opportunities, not just something part-time, fractional, contract, or temporary. Okay. So that's what I would recommend for that. And I would also recommend that if you're doing that and you can build in the time, either come back to these, stay connected, reach out, keep asking questions in the LinkedIn group. Okay. And watch the replays on YouTube. Okay. All right. So who has questions about these whole ideas? I'm seeing some pop up. If you have a question, by the way, go ahead and type it in the chat. Use the word question in all caps before writing it. And then I'm going to ask a volunteer, if somebody sees a question out there that's really important or that you want to make sure that we answer, let me know, because I don't always monitor the chat while I talk. Okay. I admit that I'm more interested in watching your faces and seeing your hands go up than I am in monitoring the chat until it's all done. So that's my problem. All right. So does anybody have a question about contract roles or about fractional roles, part-time or volunteer? While y'all are thinking about that, I want to talk about volunteer roles for a minute because I didn't mention them. Volunteer roles are fantastic. Okay. They help you do good and feel good at the same time. You can gain some incredible skills in a volunteer position. Okay. Now, a volunteer position that I'm talking about in this case isn't just a one-off. I'm there for one day and I'm done. But if you're doing something on a volunteer basis, on a routine basis, even if it's just a couple of hours a day or a week, but you're doing it on a routine basis, you make connections, you build up your own self-esteem and sense of what's working for you. Okay. You get some of that feedback that people were talking about in terms of how better to present yourself and the things that you can do. You can work on projects and suggest projects that will help to showcase and grow your skills. You can develop skills in a contract, in a volunteer position you might not have the opportunity to develop right away in a part-time job that people are looking for. Things like leadership, management, team building. Okay. It's a great opportunity. If you're taking a class, you're trying to learn or develop a new skill and you want to practice it, here's a great way to do it. And not only do you get that opportunity to put it in place and talk about it, LinkedIn and your resume, but you get a chance to then go to a new employer and say, have you ever done this? Yes, I have. And share the examples. Jim.
I'm not going to turn my camera on this time, but part of the volunteering. So that was one person I mentioned earlier that told me about myself that I talked about. But today I met with someone else who's directly involved in the project. And it was nice to hear that he and I agree on some technical things that, you know, keeping up to speed in the marketplace, in the industry, to hear things that I'm not just making this up, right? It's happening. Other people are thinking about this and thinking about implementing it or even attempting to implement it. So it was a great conversation. Part of, you know.
That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. What kind of an organization is it, Jim?
They're driving for equitable polling locations for people to be voting. So they're helping or different places where it may be too far to travel or inconvenient. So they're supporting some coding. There's a lot of coding involved, and there's a theory somebody came up with about how to optimize that. So they're trying to implement that. So there's a lot of PhD. So I'm in over my head.
All right, so both my husband and I are PhDs, and we often say that being a PhD really stands for being a fuddy-duddy. Sometimes we get so involved in what we do or our back end that it's hard to think otherwise.
Well,
But
I'll
don't
try
ever
right
think that
deeper.
you're not as smart as a PhD. If you've got
But my experience, my work experience, when I mentioned that this is my jam, I said it in those words, and they loved it. They're like, "This is the
Well,
kind of
absolutely.
person we need. We need you on our team. You know, come help us out." So
I think that's great.
thank you.
Okay, love to hear more about that. Okay, all right, we've got Mark.
Hi, Linda. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. First and foremost, thank you for hosting this Lunch and Learn. I joined last week and I'm finding some value in it. So really appreciate
Good,
that.
I'm glad.
And thanks, Ken also as well for your input. So actually very timely because while I've been searching for a job for the past several months and haven't had much luck, I actually got a call from a nonprofit who I did work with in my last role at a corporation, and they had asked me to be an advisor for a ambassador program. And so I'm familiar with the program. And so working directly with a company, right, who's in the pharmaceutical space. And so my question is, so I'm excited about the opportunity. It's a couple hours a month. And so a lot of what you said resonates. My question is, though, it didn't start yet, but I want to be able to leverage this on my LinkedIn profile and resume to be able to maybe close a gap, right? So I've been out of work for a couple of months now. I have a gap in my resume, trying to fill that gap. So I really want to leverage this. I pretty much know, have a summary in my head, but where and when and how do I then leverage it?
Okay, so you can leverage it in several different ways, and I do suggest it. So I would add it to your LinkedIn profile, and I would add it to your resume as well. Okay, you can call it part-time. It doesn't matter. They don't need to know it's only a couple of hours a week.
Right.
Nobody's going to ask. Well, what you want to do is put in the name of if it's only one company, you want to put in the name of the company, what your title is. You can call it part-time, and then talk about the skills. Add those skills to your profile for that job. As you start gaining expertise in it, as you start doing additional things, put in a couple of bullet points. When you're putting your resume together or when you're putting together your interview stories for the new job, you don't have to talk specifically about where those came from as long as you've got the experience in the story you can tell. Okay, so if this is something really that you want to talk about and it really pertains and you've got an accomplishment there, put it up top in your highlights section so that it doesn't get tied to the old job and they can immediately see how you might be a good fit for them and somebody they want to talk to.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Sandra.
Good morning, Linda and Kenneth. Good to be here. Question about the volunteering. So I have my volunteer experience under the experience section, and I think it's under the volunteering also. Is that okay to have it on both? And can you have more than one?
So yes, you can have more than one. Okay. And the question about why you're putting it, you can put it in both places on LinkedIn. Okay. The question would be why? Why would you want to do that?
I was thinking to have it stand out more.
I would rather see
So
it
like
on
when they go down, they see it
Okay.
again.
unless
maybe.
it is something that is near and dear to the new company's heart.
Okay.
Okay. I would probably put it only in one spot. Now, if you've got more than one volunteer kind of a role that you're thinking about, Sandra, or that you're doing, put the one that is most relatable in terms of skills and accomplishments to the job that you are looking for. Put that in
Okay.
the experience section.
Okay.
If you have several that you want to use to fill out the gap, then just say, you can, even in your experience section, you can say volunteer roles at, and
Okay.
put several.
So pick one, right?
I would
So pick one
that you think
section.
is most important. Right.
Okay.
And I would put it up in the experience section. You want to have
Okay.
something fill the gap between when you last had a job, okay, and what you're doing now.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mhm.
I would just caution one thing with that. You
Yes,
want to make
please.
whatever you do on your resume matches your LinkedIn profile. So if you're going to list the volunteer experience on a resume, you want to make sure it's listed similarly on your LinkedIn profile, because you don't want to put any concerns in front of an HR person. It's not to say you shouldn't do it, but just want to make sure that it's the same. Because I see that again and again at Leac Harrison. I see someone that's just started a new consulting job and it's not on their resume, and I understand it's a filler. I totally do. But someone's going to say, well, you just started a job. Why do you need to work for me? And again, I know that's the case sitting here now as a coach, but I want to make sure that people understand that, at least from the perspective of a recruiter or a hiring manager.
So Ken, if you put it up in your experience section, but call it a volunteer job, okay,
Right.
it helps to fill that gap,
Yeah.
and it doesn't look as though you have a new paying position.
No,
So
absolutely. But I'm just saying, make sure they're the same. If you're listing in if you're going to put out your own shingle as a quote unquote consulting company, same thing.
correct.
However you do it, because if it's not in one and it's in the other, and I say this all the time to my clients, I say, which one is it? Did you start a new job? And I'm just playing the devil's advocate when I
No,
do.
yes.
I understand why people do it, but you want to kind of make sure that you have all your ducks in a row.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that it's important to know that your resume and your LinkedIn profile have to match. They really do. So Sandra, my recommendation would be if this is volunteer work that you want to use to try and fill that gap, list it as part of the experience and not in the volunteer. When you get the job, you can put it back under volunteer. Or you can add it in a volunteer again, but I would still leave it in the profile, listing it as experience.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
But
you
just
both.
label it as volunteer. Thanks, Ken, for the added perspective. Any other questions? Okay, because I heard several of you talking about what kinds of roles you're looking at. And I heard several of you mention that the interviews you're having right now are for these contract or fractional roles. When Ken mentioned that you have to make sure that you know what the value is. Okay, you do. One of the things that we used to tell people, or that when we were figuring things out, is that you take the standard salary for the role, and if you're going to be paying your own taxes, buying your own benefits, that think about trying to negotiate for 27% more than what you think the average hourly rate is. And a lot of companies aren't going to do that, but internally, that's what we add to your base salary when we're trying to figure out that percentage, okay, of what your total comp is. It's not what we share with you, but for budgeting purposes, that's what it is. And that actually may have gone up a little bit as costs have gone up for companies. Most companies won't necessarily be willing to do that, but that's one reason that you'll see that why contract positions offer a higher starting salary and a higher hourly rate than they would for a permanent employee. As someone who's done a number of those, has done a couple of those contract kind of roles, or it's very easy in your head to get used to that rate that you're getting that is that added bus. And when they want to turn it into a position, It looks like a salary cut. It feels like a salary cut. Because if you've been able to negotiate that higher rate to help cover some of your added costs, remember, they're already paying those for you when you turn to an employee. So they're going to want to lower the salary, the hourly rate that they are paying, in order to compensate for the fact that they're already paying those costs. It's uncomfortable to say, wait a minute, as a contractor, I was doing this. I was making $40 an hour. And now as an employee, they only want to pay me 32. Why? Okay. Didn't they value what I was doing? It's not that. It's, again, that different cost value. It's the expense versus the salary and what they're putting in on the back end. Because remember, as a contractor, you are paying both sides of your Social Security benefit or your Social Security taxes. You are paying both sides of your Medicare taxes, which at this point, I think both sides makes it about 15.8%. In addition, you are purchasing your own health insurance. So you need to figure all of that in when you're thinking about what all of these are. And you can absolutely negotiate for a rate, even in a contract role. Okay. The other thing is, there are some companies that are trying to work with you on those contract positions. You can be offered a contract role directly through the company itself. Some companies have started contracting with outside firms to be the employer of record for their contractors. And that could be, for example, the one that comes to mind is Robert Half. They have an entire division that simply services companies who want to place contractors on their books. Robert Half would be the employer of record. That's where your paycheck will come from. But because they are in effect just managing that contract paperwork and the payments, okay, for the contractors, then what happens is, because they have so many, they may be able to offer you benefits of some sort. It's not going to be great as it would be working for the company, but they will often offer you the option of getting some benefits. More importantly, they will take care of the company portion of the Social Security and the Medicare taxes, because the company, they're adding that under the company fee. So if you see that they're doing it through somebody like Robert Half, that's not a bad thing. Okay. Absolutely. Robert Half does have salary reports you can see on their website. I would also check out payscale.com and salary.com. We've talked about both of those as well. What I like about payscale.com and salary.com, sometimes Robert Half will do it as well, is that the information that they're posting does not come from self-reports. In other words, it's not from just people who are raising their hand and saying, here's what I was getting. It comes from salary survey data put together by employers. Now, it's still going to be a range, and it's not going to necessarily be an exact match in terms of job title or location, but it gives you a more accurate estimate of what you're going to be able to see in the job market than it would be if you're going to some place like Indeed, which is usually guesstimating, or more importantly, if you're going to Glassdoor, Glassdoor does not do surveys. It's really just self-report. So just think about all of that. And I saw that Alan said you've never been offered a rate that built in that extra 27% to cover for foregone benefits. Companies are trying to avoid that. I'm just telling you from the company perspective, that's what we add on, or what we added on when we were looking at an employee salary. So if the employee salary was $40 an hour, from my budgeting perspective, it was that $40 plus that extra 27%. Okay. But companies are balking at adding that to the rate. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Linda. Question. In regards to the salary, is that where you actually, because I've noticed since you mentioned those two websites, the pay scale and the salary, there's the go between as far as they'll say one amount to a certain amount. And is that the amount you put that if you want that amount? So
I'm
like
not-
40, like say $40 an hour to $50 an hour. Do you put the amount that they put?
Are you saying
Or
this is what I'm looking
do
for
you go
when companies are
lower?
asking you? You can do whatever you like, Sandra. This is what they're saying is the standard rate of pay for somebody with this level of experience in this job. Okay.
Mhm.
So use your own best judgment. I hate the what are you looking
Okay.
for question. Absolutely hate it. Okay. Because it puts the job seeker at a disadvantage. Company holds all the cards. It is better than the
Right,
what are
that's
you-
why I was wondering, what do you put when they say that?
Okay. So if you have to put it in writing, and Ken, I don't know whether you're making this advice to people too, but up until, no, I think even now for the most part, sometimes you can either put in to be discussed, okay, open, but most of those fields on an application are not taking letters, okay, not taking words they really want numbers. Some of them have gotten very sophisticated and actually do a drop-down box. You're looking for something between here and here. And they're doing it because if they haven't, if there's just this blank field, all the system is looking for is to see whether or not you actually put in a number. And as somebody who has used a lot of those ATS tracking systems, okay, the ATS tracking system, unless I as the recruiter put in and say, I'm looking for somebody who's looking for X, I'm not going to pull it up. It's not one of my criteria. But many applicant tracking systems, many applications will allow you to put in something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. The system will accept it. It may send a message to the recruiter, at which point the recruiter is going to look, and if they're interested in your background, they're going to ask and say, by the way, I noticed you didn't say anything. What number are you looking for? But you've got that conversation. In all the years that I've been giving that advice, I have not had a single applicant turned down because they didn't fill in that number. I had 3 who got phone calls and said, we were looking to see what you were looking for. Can you please explain? At which point they said, well, you know, I don't really know enough about you or the job, and you don't know about me. So I think that's something to be discussed later. Why don't you tell me the range? And I'm happy to tell you if I can work within it. You can't say that on an application.
Mm-mm.
You can say that in every single conversation that you have. They know what the range is. They know what their budget is.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's always my recommendation for that. Ken, what do you think?
No, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. We try different things. I mean, sometimes there's an other box that's there, and the other box, you can select the other box and say, the rate for this position, as I understand it, based on my research, is X to X. But you
Correct.
just don't know exactly what they're using, whether it's a knockout question or you have to put something in. I'm not a big proponent. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, ATS is it's a crapshoot. And that's why I say the best thing to do is to apply directly to the company through LinkedIn or somewhere else, because they may never, sometimes it's following directions. Like you said, if you don't put a number in or you don't add a cover letter and they require it, you're going to get knocked out for not following directions. It's just no way
Exactly.
to know.
And Ken, I'm sorry, I've lost you on my screen, so I can't. There
I'm
you are.
here. I'm here.
Nope, I found you. You just got
Okay.
moved from the first spot to the very last one.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Does that help, Sandra?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
You're very welcome. So always when you're talking about salary in any kind of a conversation, what you really want to say is based on what I know now, based on what you know now, if they're really pushing you for any kind of a number. Okay. Give yourself that room to negotiate at the end.
Linda, Sherry had a question.
I know I'm getting her up right now. Sherry, I
Okay,
can't
sorry.
put on screen because your camera's off.
I have two cameras on.
Well, you're not showing up on screen.
Okay. And I'm on my iPad. My iPad has my camera too. Anyway, what do you think about putting in $1?
No. The
No?
system is going to be looking for either, if it's an hourly rate, they're going to be looking for, there you go, for at least 2 numbers. If it is a salaried rate, they're going to be looking for 5.
Okay.
So the system will kick you out.
Thank
Okay?
you.
But any human eyes looking at that, Sherry, will understand that if you're putting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, whatever it is, it's not a real number. It's simply a placeholder to get past the system.
Okay.
Great question. Okay, we are now at 12 o'clock. We have time for one more question if you want it. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording and remind everybody about next week. Okay, so highly recommend that you continue to look. I know that everybody wants those full-time roles, and that's okay. And I did too. You absolutely want to keep looking for that. But remember, companies want to make the best use of what they got. They're still holding those cards. If you take a part-time role, you take a fractional role, you take a contract role, continue to look. Don't wait until the last month or 2 before that contract ends. You don't know exactly when it is going to end. You want to keep that job search active throughout the process. Okay? You get to make the choice. Remember, companies don't have your interest at heart. They've got theirs. And you want to do whatever you can to find that next forever job, because that's what's really important. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording. And when I do that, I want to tell you to remember to go to the chat. To make sure that you copy it and save it for yourself. And you do that by going up to the very top of the chat bar. There are 3 dots to the right of where it says Job Search Lunch and Learn. You can click Save, and it will save it for you. You can also just do the old-fashioned, make sure that you're doing it. Scroll up the entire chat with your highlighting bar, okay? Highlight that, copy and paste it into your own document. I will also copy and paste it into the private group. Now, the private group is important, and I mentioned it before. I'm going to add it to the chat one more time. We have a private group on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, private group means that it is not discoverable by anyone else. You cannot search for the group and find it. The only way you get invited to or accepted into the group is if you have participated in one of these lunch and learns, or if you have registered knowing that you can't attend, okay, but you still want to be a part of the activity. The registration is what really counts. Your comments are not visible to anyone else on LinkedIn. They are visible only on that private group, which means that it's a safe space. It's a safe place to network, to ask questions, to share job opportunities. Okay, Sherry is very active on the private group, okay? Doing just that, sharing jobs, sharing other posts. Trying to see who else. I think, David, you've done some of that. Okay. So we've got all of that going on, and those are ways that you can use that as a networking and support group as well. So the link is there. Go ahead and do it. And as soon as we get off the call or later this afternoon, I'll make sure that I accept you. Make sure that you connect with people because it's important. If anybody wants a chat, okay, I am happy to do that as well. So I'm going to put my contact information back in there. Make sure you connect with me. As I mentioned, this will be posted on YouTube. If you haven't signed up for the YouTube channel, you may want to do that because that way you get, especially if you click the notification bell, you should get notified when a new video is posted. And I will admit that I'm not always the fastest at doing that. Where I'm trying to do some of these lives and see whether or not they work. Oops. Okay. Excellent. So I think I've got it all up there. Remember, if anybody wants one-on-one coaching, please feel free to reach out. I would love to work with you and see whether we can't help you get your next forever job. In the meantime, have a great week. Okay. So Suzanne asked, she said, you saved this as the Zoom link. This is the Zoom link that will work for the remainder of this year. Okay, unless LinkedIn has another problem with some of our meetings. But for right now, this is the Zoom link that will work for the remainder of the year. Go ahead and add it to your calendar as a recurring meeting every Wednesday at 11. Hope to see you all next week. Mark Anthony Dyson is going to be here. I expect it to be, I'm hoping it will be a full room, and I'm expecting it to be a great conversation about job scams, how to recognize them, and how to avoid them. All right, I'll leave the group open for about another 5 minutes, just so that if anybody wants to still capture that chat, they can do that. But otherwise, have a great week, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Linda.
You're welcome, everybody. Have a great week. I'm going to be closing the room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all. Have a great week.